From the Detroit Free Press, I'm Robin Chan with today's Voice Briefing. It's Monday, June 19th, 2023.
This is Lily Altavina with the Detroit Free Press. More than 94,000 Michigan students are designated as English learners, or students learning English not as their native language, an increase from 77,000 in 2013. But advocacy organizations say that the rate at which the state funds English learner programs is woefully inadequate to successfully graduate these students. One organization puts the funding gap at $474 million. The Michigan State Legislature plans to add funds this year, but some are calling for a complete revamp of the way the state funds these students. I visited an English learning program in Holland, Michigan, to see the learning in action and talk to students and educators about why investment is so important to them. To find out what they said, head to freep.com.
I'm Frank Witzel with the Detroit Free Press. Charges this week that former President Donald Trump improperly kept and hid top-secret documents that he was required to turn over to the National Archives and Records Administration revived decades-old warnings from archivists about record security. Until recently, one of the nation's more notorious National Archives cases involved a Detroit couple who were caught in the early 1960s with a trove of stolen documents that included original signed letters from Presidents John Quincy Adams, Andrew Jackson, Abraham Lincoln, and others. Back then, Wayne State University history professor Philip Mason, who had a hand in identifying and authenticating the stolen one-of-a-kind American history artifacts, warned that treasured records nationwide were at risk and there would be more problems in the future. Since the Detroit case, National Archive breaches have ranged from the mundane to the most serious. An author who changed the date on a presidential pardon with a fountain pen, a researcher who filched hundreds of World War II-era dog tags, and a former national security advisor who admitted to swiping and destroying classified documents. Mason died in 2021, but concluded there was ample evidence the archive security would continue to be a problem. He cautioned there was a whole generation of researchers who equate archival and library rules with a form of authoritarianism and who have few qualms about passing and subverting them. He did not mention, or perhaps imagine, a former president might be accused of being in that group.
From politics reporters Arpan Lobo and Clara Hendrickson, Governor Gretchen Whitmer expanded Michigan's civil rights law that bars racial discrimination to include discrimination based on hair texture and hairstyles, such as braids, locks, and twists. Bill sponsor, State Senator Sarah Anthony of Lansing, at the bill's signing Thursday, stated, quote, "Let's just call it what it is. Hair discrimination is nothing more than thinly veiled racial discrimination." End quote. With Whitmer's signature, Michigan became the 20th state to create such a civil rights protection from discrimination based on hair. Colloquially known as the Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair, or CROWN Act, Senate Bill 90 updates the definition of race in the state's Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act to include, quote, "traits historically associated with race, including, but not limited to, hair texture and protective hairstyles," end quote. The law bars discrimination in housing, employment, education, and public accommodations. Anthony and Whitmer both wore crown pins to mark the occasion. For more on this story, you can search for Arpan Lobo's and Clara Hendrickson's article, New Michigan Law Bans Discrimination for Natural Hair, Hairstyles, on freep.com.
I'm Andrew Burkle with the Free Press Sports Department, and this weekend we learned the Detroit Tigers may not need starting pitchers after all. In a 4-game series with the AL Central leading Minnesota Twins, the Tigers twice had to use their bullpen from start to finish, and twice found a way to win after hanging on for a 6-4 victory on Sunday. It's been one injury after another for the Tigers this year, particularly when it comes to starting pitchers. Matt Manning, Tariq Skubal, and Casey Mize have spent the entire season so far on the injured list. Then, ace Eduardo Rodriguez got hurt, followed shortly after by Alex Faedo. That's left the Tigers with a litany of holes in their starting staff and is why we've seemingly been getting more bullpen-only games than ever. So far, Tigers manager A.J. Hinch has weathered the storm about as well as you could hope for, with the Tigers' offense actually contributing to losses more than the pitching. The Tigers are 29th in runs scored and 20th in runs allowed. Miraculously, the Tigers are only 5 games out of the AL Central lead thanks to the 3-1 series win over the Twins this weekend. With some positive injury news coming out recently about the starting pitchers mentioned above, the Tigers and their bullpen again, may have done just enough to stay in the race for the division. For more stories like this, head to the sports section of our website at freep.com/sports.
Find more from the Detroit Free Press by visiting freep.com. That's FREEP.com. Thanks for listening, and you'll hear more from us tomorrow.